Daddy issues. We all have them. Probably, to some degree. I know I do, but I also have a lot of other issues. And for now, I'm going to focus in on the daddy issues of it all and sort of break down some of the issues that I can link to the missing daddy. Before I get into the Hank Hill thing, I want to sort of define what daddy issues are, because it's something that I've been curious about for a long time, but never actually jumped down the rabbit hole until recently. So I'm going to share what I found out. Okay, so yeah, before I get into my story, I want to talk about some of the generic signs of daddy issues to sort of, I don't know, discuss what I do and do not relate to, and maybe you can get something out of it too. Yeah. Okay, so I've been reading a fair amount, and I would like to summarize what I've read more or less so we could be on the same page. Anyway, I'll try to say daddy issues a little bit less. It's also called the father wound, and I'll try to say father wound sometimes, just so it's not repetitive. But it still will be. Some of the causes are having an emotionally distant father or a physically distant father, meaning you didn't see them a lot as a kid, or in my case, you never saw them as a kid or at all. Then there is probably more severe would be like an emotionally abusive father or a physically abusive father that is in your life, and that's the problem because of the way they are. As far as symptoms go, we got low self-esteem or anxiety, like not thinking you're good enough because you were raised to think you weren't good enough, and that is a direct reflection of someone else's behavior, not really yours. That it can lead to depression. It can lead to anger. It can be anger because you are angry at someone, or it could be anger because you were subject to a lot of anger and that taught you that's how you're supposed to act, and you kind of just absorb that behavior because it's all you know. It's all you know. Or it could be you weren't exposed to anger and it pisses you off. People are wildly different. To get to something that's a little bit more specific to me would be the effect on your boundaries. Some people end up getting really rigid boundaries. Like they have lines they do not want you to cross. On the other side of that, which is kind of more my side, would be too loose of boundaries. You don't want to be... maybe you didn't get enough attention or affection, so you feel like you want to compensate for that by inviting as much attention as possible, so you don't draw any lines because you want people to come in. Some people cope by adopting, and some people cope by sort of rebelling against that. And I feel I am more in the rebelling category, which has probably affected my whole life's take on masculinity as a whole, which is pretty interesting. I have avoided a lot of typically manly things throughout my life because I didn't want to resemble my father, if that makes sense. I want to get into more specifics on masculinity, but that's going to be a different video because it's pretty broad. Yeah, so at a young age, a lot of my behavior was based on trying not to resemble my father, which is pretty weird when I don't have any memories of my father. My parents got divorced when I was around 7 months old, and soon after that, my dad moved away. In my earliest memories, the man that I thought was my dad was actually my first stepdad because my mom got remarried. But soon after that, they got divorced. So there was a bit of confusion in thinking that like, oh, my parents are divorced, and that's my dad. Only to find out that that was actually not my dad. That was a second divorce, and I didn't know there was a first one. And so that was weird. I didn't think about it much at that time, but looking back, I can see that would cause a lot of confusion if you were to tell me that about you. Okay, so for me, the first actual like father figure themed memories that I got were of my uncle, my cousin's dad, who I got to watch him raise my cousin. So I got to see what that's like from the outside. I would visit them pretty often as a kid, but as I probably up to like second or third grade was when I stopped visiting them all the time. So that was my like the end of regular exposure to that guy. So I learned a little bit about his personality and what kind of like what dads are supposed to be, like that strict firm hand behavior and like sort of like working on cars, like hanging out in the garage, talking about sports. He had his office in his garage that he would come out of when he was done working, and then we'd eat breakfast. Like that kind of a lot of stereotypical like dad tropes, like TV dad tropes. He had a lot of them, so I kind of was introduced to these things, but I didn't necessarily assign them. I didn't like bond to them because I didn't have long-term exposure. Now in my life, because I was essentially raised by a single mom, I did watch a lot of TV, and at some point I found out about King of the Hill, and I loved that show. I liked that show a lot. I think it only aired once a week, so I was only seeing it once a week, but I was seeing it pretty much every week for a very long time. It was minor exposure, but for a long term, and so the image never got to fade away. And Hank Hill, the dad in that show, him being a dad was a huge part of like the story. It wasn't just like manly guy, it was like father. He was a father figure, and he was very similar to my uncle. It's like my uncle introduced these ideas, and then Hank Hill defined them and actually like showed me what those ideas really are. So, yeah, obviously I remember my uncle, but he was clearly uncle. And then he was like, his like image is of an uncle. And now I have this Hank Hill figure that is very much like the uncle and is a father. So for the first time, I had that image. Hank cleared up what my uncle was like, but also filled in for the image of what my dad was. And so when I needed to rebel against my dad's identity, it was Hank. So I am avoiding becoming like Hank Hill, which is strange. Yeah. It took me a long time to recognize all of this, and in that time I've actively avoided anything manly. So like I grew up not liking sports. If a boy came up to me and wanted to talk to me about sports, I would find that uninteresting and essentially avoid that person. The same goes for like, I don't know, working on cars, just like typical macho stuff. Honestly, that led to a lot of distance. So like I didn't connect with guys a lot. That I don't know exactly how, but I'm sure it has connected to like my sexuality, because I was very much a prude growing up. I'm very like, I wouldn't say sex negative, but like not sex positive. Like I just didn't talk about that stuff. And so like the idea of like having sex with girls wasn't something that I was really focusing on or really wanted, because it just felt weird. It felt icky. That'll probably be in the masculinity video. or a separate video about sex, but I don't know if I'm going to do that. Maybe I should. Anyway, I was mostly raised by women, my sister, my aunt, my mom. Obviously I saw my uncle, but I didn't spend that much time with him. And so I did end up adopting a lot more feminine interests rather than masculine interests. I don't want this to sound like I don't want that to sound like a negative, because I don't think it's a negative. I actually think it's kind of nice, because it's a nice wholesome foundation. And nowadays a lot of that fear of being manly has kind of faded. Into my 20s, I would say I started to accept interests, whereas before I would think something's nice, and then if I thought something was cool and then I saw other guys think it's cool, I would start to like it less. And I don't really do that anymore. Now I kind of just like what I like. For the most part, I'm not fully evolved, but I really like going through hardware stores when I am working on a project and I need to get a new tool. That's exciting. I actually have kind of a tool collection. I still am not into sports, not really into cars, but I will say, yet. It's, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what I'm going to like? I'm not opposed to these things. I haven't met people that are interested in these things enough for me to want to connect to them about it. So it's all that's to say that I kind of like my identity right now, even though it was kind of created out of spite. Okay, so why am I talking about all of this? What is my point? I don't know. This is interesting stuff to me. Hearing other people tell their stories has always helped me figure out how I feel about things, what my story is. And so right now I'm sharing my story in case it's interesting to you. And so I can invite you to think about your story. Do you have any of the issues I mentioned earlier? Have they influenced your behavior or your tastes? Are there any shows you like because you connected to it in a specific way? And when you really think about it, why do you connect to it in that way? I don't know that you have to think about these things, but I find it very helpful to navigate the world knowing what I am, if that makes sense. I do find that when a memory or a feeling is too painful to talk to other people about it, or maybe it's embarrassing, I sometimes like to connect the dots to what's causing it, because it takes the memory, it takes the painful memory and turns it into a puzzle that I can solve rather than just feel. I don't know if that's healthy, but it feels healthy. It's comforting, at least. It's nice. If you have a story that you find interesting, or maybe this connected to you in any way, or it didn't connect to you in any way, that's also valuable information. Are you completely different in every way? None of this even made sense to you? It's kind of cool. Feel free to share any thoughts. Judge me. Judge yourself. Maybe don't fully trauma dump. If you do feel that you need to vent, that's totally fine. But maybe try to vent while connecting dots. That's more, I feel like that's a little bit more approachable for other people and more digestible. Just talking about how much pain you feel is going to be hard for me to engage with, because I don't know what you need from me. But if you are telling me a painful memory while also telling me how you think that made you act in a certain moment, I'll give an example with my own stuff. My taste in music has been wildly affected by not wanting to like stuff that other people like to the point where I have definitely been, you could definitely call me a hipster. I'm very much into stuff that other people aren't into. And the funny thing is that my first example of that is Taylor Swift, which is ridiculous because of how mainstream and popular she is. But when I first started to listen to her, it was because it was like dorky. It was like dorky to make, like, it was like poppy and girly, and it wasn't something that like men should listen to. So I liked Taylor Swift, and it was partially because I wasn't supposed to. And it's like, why did I do that? Why did I only like stuff that I wasn't supposed to? And I'm thinking about all this dad stuff, like, it's probably connected. I spent most of my childhood trying not to be Hank Hill. So it makes sense that that's one of my coping mechanisms, is to rebel, is to resist. That makes sense to me, at least. Yeah, that's me processing a little bit. Maybe it would be helpful for me, and maybe for anyone else that reads it, to share your stuff. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, that's my whole Hank Hill thing. Share what you want or don't, and have a good day.